All right, my topic, SDLC tool integration using Tasktop Hub. So with my agenda today, I'm going to be covering a few slides. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on slides so that I have plenty of time for today's demo. But I do want to briefly explain what I mean by tool integration, cover that a little bit, and then set the stage for the demo by mentioning just a few items about Tasktop Hub, kind of prepare for what you're going to see during the demo. Then I'll go into a live demo of the product. We'll cross our fingers and hope everything works well there. As we know, live demos can always bring some unexpected things. And then questions I will take after Arvin's topic. I'll cover those, but definitely feel free to type those in as we go, as you think of them, and then we'll cover those afterwards. All right, so a bit of background. If you haven't heard of Tasktop before, it's a software company, and they sell a product called Tasktop Hub. It's one of the products that they sell. I've been a Tasktop customer for about 4 or 5 years, starting with their Tasktop Sync product. So you might have heard of Tasktop Sync. And as you can see, we still have several integrations running under that Tasktop Sync. Last year, I spoke as a customer at Tasktop's first conference. It was last October, and I got excited about their next-gen integration tool that's called Tasktop Hub. So ever since that conference, I've been using their Tasktop Hub product, which is their next-gen product, and I've been using that for about 6 months, and as you can see, we have several integrations already up and running on that, on Tasktop Hub. And so this year, we're going to work on moving the rest of our Tasktop Sync integrations over to Tasktop Hub so that we'll have everything all on the same platform. So tool integration, what is that? Well, tool integration simply means software tools talking to each other. It's kind of in a nutshell. And as software tools typically store a lot of information, right? That's their nature. And we see that organizations tend to have a lot of tools, tend to accumulate a lot of tools, and those typically come from different vendors. And it usually doesn't take too long before you realize that it can be real beneficial to have your software tools sharing that information with each other. Sometimes we have ways that we, as humans, do that through email, but boy, wouldn't it be a lot easier if the software tools could themselves share their information? Wouldn't it be great if they could talk to each other? A lot of software tools these days have what are called APIs, application programming interfaces. And APIs are great ways to send and receive information between tools. And API calls are formatted certain ways, and you've got different platforms and protocols like SOAP and REST and things like that. But these APIs are that basic mechanism for exchanging information. And developers can write their own mechanisms to utilize these APIs to share information. And there are even some software tools will develop their own mechanisms and have that as part of their product. One good example of that is the Micro Focus ALM Synchronizer. You may be familiar with ALM Synchronizer. It's a tool that can do a lot of what I'm going to show today. It can synchronize between ALM and Jira. It covers real basic synchronizations real well. It's a good free tool. We've been using Tasktop Hub for some time, and as you'll see, Tasktop Hub can do that as well as a whole lot more. So what is Tasktop Hub? Well, it's basically a tool integrator, and it provides 3 central functions. The primary one that I'm going to be speaking about today is this ability to synchronize data. So I'm going to show you how Tasktop Hub can synchronize data between Micro Focus ALM and Atlassian Jira, how you can create an artifact in ALM, and Hub can then automatically create that in Jira, and then it keeps those artifacts in sync so that if you make any updates on one artifact, it can then update that in the other. And then Hub can do a couple of other things, like you can push data from one tool to another and kind of as a generic endpoint. It can also capture and store transactions for transactional logging in case you have a tool that maybe doesn't have any logging or doesn't have sufficient logging. It can provide that as well. All right, basic mechanics. So Tasktop Hub provides, it's a simplification of using these APIs. So as I said, you're a developer, you can make your own API calls. What Tasktop Hub though does is it provides the platform for doing that in a very efficient and I'll say elegant way. So we can set up a defect between endpoints like ALM and Jira, and this platform then takes care of all of your querying needs. So it's going to go out and it's going to query ALM, it's going to query Jira, it's going to look for new artifacts that are applicable for sync, and it'll create them in the other tools. It's going to keep watching those artifacts to see did any field updates occur, and if so, then our Tasktop Hub will go ahead and it'll make those field updates in the other tool. It'll watch for comments, it'll watch for attachments. So when comments or attachments get added, it'll automatically facilitate the addition of those items to the artifact in the other tool. And then it also provides mechanisms to retry. Maybe there's a locked record on one of your endpoints and it can't update it at that time. It will wait and then it'll retry it again several times until it is successful. Reporting errors. Sometimes errors occur when you make an API call. Maybe there's a connection issue, maybe there's a data issue. Hub can automatically facilitate that reporting of those errors, alert you to that fact, and maybe in a future topic, I'll talk about how you can even set up some automatic remediation of some of those errors, which is pretty cool. Storing metrics, obviously how much activity it's doing is a great thing to see, and Tasktop Hub currently integrates with 39 different SDLC tools from a variety of vendors, so that's pretty exciting. A lot of those that I'll show you probably will look very familiar to you, and you might actually have them, several of them in your organization. All right, so the demo today, I'm going to talk about 4 different pieces to set up an integration. These are kind of your minimum 4 steps to get a very basic integration up and running. So I'm going to talk about repository connections. We'll have 2 of those. Tasktop Hub needs to know a URL and a login credentials for each tool so that it can go out and can make those API calls. I'll show you the model, and that is, in Tasktop Hub, a model is your generic representation of the fields that are going to be involved with an integration. And we'll see how Tasktop Hub has predefined models that make it really quick and easy to get a basic integration set up and running quickly. So as I said, the model is the fields that you're going to use, and then the collections map each tool endpoint to those model fields. So it'll go through, and it'll actually go through on its own, and I'll show you how it'll look at your ALM, it'll look at your ALM fields, it'll look at the model fields and say, oh, hey, these match, and set those up. It'll look at Jira, match those up, do a lot of things automatically, and to get this up and running pretty quick. And the collections also are where you indicate what ALM projects, what Jira projects. Maybe you have just one project in each, maybe you've got multiple projects. And if you have multiple projects, then when you set up your integration between your ALM and your Jira, using your collections, which are pointing through your model, and using your repository, then the integration is where you can set up the routing controls. You can say route from this project to this project under these conditions, or based on this field setting, filtering as well. Maybe you don't want all your ALM defects going over to Jira. Maybe you just want certain ones, or only at a certain time, maybe at a certain status. You can set up the filtering, and that's how the integration then facilitates all of that moving of the data. All right, let's go to our demo. Here's the exciting part. All right, so this is Tasktop Hub. I'm going to go ahead and log in. All right, the Tasktop Hub dashboard comes up, and right away you can see all of the different products, the different tools that it integrates with. I have the top 4 here that are colored in because those are the ones that we are using in our organization. But you can see all the different tools that they have available. And of course, with Hub, there's different licensing models. So maybe you have access to a couple, or Maybe your license model would have access to more or even all of them. And then you tell them which ones you need, and then you can have those added into your package there. So I've got those top 4. And then the 4 items that I mentioned were the repositories, models, collections, integrations. Those are the 4 buttons up here. So I did go ahead and set up my 2 repositories already. So I set up a connection to our installation of Jira, and I set up a connection to our installation of Micro Focus ALM, gave it the URL, gave it the login credentials, password, all that information. Now, models. Here is where the predefined models come. So when you bring up Hub, it comes out of the box with several predefined models for different artifact types. And what I'm going to be using here today is going to be the defect type. So this is how it comes pre-configured, and you can use this as is. You can add fields to this. You could go and create your own model if you need. But here's the predefined one, and it has fields that are very common to defects in organizations. And it has the field labels, and then any of these that typically contain drop-down values like your priority and your severity, they have generic values in there for those. So again, model is your generic representation. Here's what I want to sync between. And then the collections, we'll see that I'll map my particular endpoint and my particular projects to that model. And then where the model fields overlap between 2 endpoints, those are the fields that will integrate. All right, so I want to go through, and I'm going to move through this pretty quick because I want to show that I can set up basically from scratch a simple synchronization between ALM and Jira in about 5 minutes or less. So I'm going to go through, and I set up the repositories are there. I've got my out-of-the-box model, so we'll go ahead and use that. That'll work great for me. I'm going to go through and set up my 2 collections and my integration, and I'm going to move kind of quick so we can see if I could do that in 5 minutes or less. So I'm going to go to my collection, I'm going to start my clock, and I'm going to create my new collection. So here again is where I'm going to map my ALM endpoint to my defect model. I'm going to go into my connection, I'm going to choose my ALM repository, I'm going to choose my project, I'll pick an ALM project that I want to use, and then that will enable me to select my ALM artifact type, which will be my defect. I'll choose my model, which will be a defect, and I save. So it's now gone out to my ALM project. It's looked at all my ALM fields in my organization, and it's already mapped them all up with the defect, or yeah, the defect model field out of the box. And then it's alerting me to the fact that I've got a few here with drop-down values that I need to map. As we know, drop-down values can differ between different endpoint tools, right? You might have 1, 2, 3 in one tool. You might have high, medium, and low. So this is allowing me to map my ALM custom drop-down values to the model values. And then we'll see that those model values will then map, of course, between the 2 endpoints and allow everything to flow. So I'm going to go ahead and map my priority values. Select all these. All right. And we'll go ahead and we should have one more set here. My status values. So again, I'll choose what my ALM status values and how those map up to my model status values. Open might be progress, rejected, reopen with that. Okay, we'll map all those. All right, so there I'm done, and I've mapped all my ALM fields to my generic model field. I'm done with that collection. Now I can go and create my second endpoint collection, and this will be my Jira defect collection. So I'll pick my Jira endpoint. I'll go in and I'll pick my Jira project. That's where it'll pull my Jira fields from. I can select as my work item a bug. I can select, again, I'm selecting the same defect model that I chose with ALM, and that's going to do the same process. It's going to go out, look at Jira. and it's going to automatically match up my JIRA fields with my model fields. You can see that I've got two here that need to have some value linkage, so I'll do those. Just connect these values. And we'll do major, high, medium, trivial, low. All right, those two. Okay, and then I should have one more, which will be my status values. All right, so I'll go ahead and connect these up, maybe analysis in review or in progress, maybe a pending acceptance is maybe a fixed. Close, sounds like done, that looks good. In dev, that's probably in progress. QA ready, these are probably kind of fixed. Type status, maybe a sprint ready, we'll just set that there. All right, and we're done with that. So I've got both of my endpoints are mapped to my model. And then any of these model fields that match, that line up between the two endpoints, that's where my fields are going to sync. So now we'll go to our integrations, and we'll set up a new integration. And you can see we can do several different integration types. I'm going to do the work item synchronization. And this is where I'll do my ALM JIRA. And I'll pick my ALM repository, and I'll pick my collection. And I'll pick my JIRA repository, my JIRA collection. All right. And then we'll say my artifact creation flow. Maybe I want to do one-way creation. If it's new in ALM, I want it to create in JIRA, but not necessarily the other way. Or I could do it both ways, whichever. We'll do our routing, so I only have one project to route. We'll do our filtering. Maybe I want to filter on status when status is in progress. And we'll do our comment flow. And we'll flow comments both ways. And we'll do our attachment flow. And I'm coming right up at 5 minutes if you're keeping track. And we'll do our conflict strategy. And we'll put that, and I'm done. So I'm actually went over a little bit. I talked a little bit too much, so I did go about 10 seconds over. But that is the basic steps for setting up an integration in right at that 5 minutes time. So that's pretty good. Now all I have to do at this point is click the run button, and my integration starts. And now we can see that my integration is running. And I can go to my activity, and I can see from my activity, did I have these already? Yeah, these were old, so we'll remove those. All right, so in my activity now, it has not done any synchronization because I told it to synchronize when my ALM defect is in progress, which maps back to my open status. So you can see that I have one ALM defect, did a new status. It has several fields filled in from ALM. I've got a description. I've got a couple of comments in here. I have a few values, a summary, and all that. And we'll go ahead and we'll set this now to open, which then maps to that in progress state on the model. And then Tasktop Hub, we can see it's already picked it up here. It's picked up that ALM defect, and it's done its work. And so we can see it's done a few things here. It went ahead and created an artifact in JIRA, and here's the JIRA ID, and it did update some information back to ALM. We can expand, we can see it did a comment, we did a comment. So now we can go to our JIRA, and I'll do my refresh, and there is my defect from ALM. And we can look at that, and it's got the summary from ALM, and the description came from ALM. We can see even the comments, the two comments that I added in ALM are here. Reporter was by me. We can add a comment back from JIRA. Go ahead and add that. And we go to our activity, and we should see that show up here. There we did our activity, So we'll go look at ALM, I'll do a refresh, and there's my comment right back from Jira. All right, so that was kind of quick, but I just wanted to give you a flavor for what Tasktop Hub can do, and that's really a basic integration, and it was that quick and that easy. Those predefined models really help you figure out what, because it does the work for you, right? It goes out, looks at your ALM, looks at your Jira, matches everything up, and says, here's, based on what I see, here's what you're most likely going to want to sync. And of course, you can then expand from there. You can add new fields as needed. You can add values, get all that mapped up and everything, and work from there. But always gives you, it's a great way to have a good starting point. It's a little bit easier to work with something that's already there rather than necessarily creating everything from scratch. All right, so, and as I said, that was kind of a basic one. I'm thinking about doing more of these, maybe doing a series of different Tasktop Hub, kind of, you know, each one going into a little more depth and a little more just beyond some of the basics. So if you're interested in any of that, but feel free to leave that comment, leave that feedback at the end, or let me know, yeah, I'd like to see more about Tasktop Hub. Here's some contact information.